This key concept video is about homeostasis. By the end of it, we will have looked at why homeostasis is so important, including about negative feedback mechanisms, coordination of homeostasis, blood glucose regulation and what happens when it goes wrong, and finishing with thermoregulation. So what is homeostasis? It is the maintenance of a constant internal environment within a preset range despite changes in the external environment. This is important for normal body functioning. Homeostasis works a little like a thermostat in a house. If the temperature rises too high, the thermostat turns off the heating. Then, when the temperature drops too low, the thermostat turns the heating back on to bring it back up to the pre-programmed temperature. This process of reversing the change and returning conditions to within the normal range is known as negative feedback, and it is an important concept in biology. A negative feedback loop requires several components: a sensory receptor to detect the stimulus, the change in the environment, a coordination system to process the information and then send the information to the effector, and an effector, a muscle or gland, to carry out the response. Now let's look at the coordination systems involved in homeostasis. These are the nervous and endocrine systems, which work together to coordinate the body. The nervous system detects changes in the internal and external environment and brings about a rapid response which is short-lived. It also sends signals to the endocrine system to release hormones, which usually results in a slower response which lasts longer. The endocrine system involves the secretion of hormones, chemical signals from the endocrine glands into the blood. The hormones are then carried all around the body to their target cells. Once at the target cells, they attach to the complementary receptors on the plasma membrane or inside the cell to bring about the response. We will now look at some examples of hormones. Here we will look at insulin and glucagon, which control blood glucose concentration. When blood glucose concentration increases, say after a meal, it is detected by the beta cells in the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas. These then release insulin into the blood. Glucose in, insulin. Most body cells have receptors for insulin, so insulin attaches to these, stimulating the uptake of glucose. The liver and muscle cells take up the glucose and convert it to glycogen to store it, a process known as glycogenesis, the formation of glycogen. Glycogen is a large polysaccharide which is insoluble and unreactive, so will just sit inside the cell until it is needed. This uptake of glucose by the cells then brings the blood glucose back within the preset range. When blood glucose drops, it is detected by the alpha cells in the islets of Langerhans, which secrete glucagon into the blood. Glucose gone, glucagon. This glucagon attaches to receptors primarily on the plasma membranes of liver cells. The resulting effects include glycogenolysis, the splitting, lysis of glycogen into glucose, and gluconeogenesis, the formation, genesis, of new, neo-glucose from non-carbohydrate organic molecules. The glucose is then released into the blood to raise the blood glucose levels back within the normal range. So, between insulin and glucagon, blood glucose is kept within a safe range. However, this does not always work. Diabetes is a long-term condition where the insulin regulatory system no longer functions properly. The pancreas may produce too little insulin, or body cells may not respond to it. As a result, glucose builds up in the blood. Persistently high blood glucose damages blood vessels and nerves and can cause complications in the eyes, kidneys and heart. The two main types of diabetes are type 1 and type 2, which differ in their causes and treatment. Type 1 diabetes occurs when the immune system destroys the insulin-producing beta cells of the pancreas. This autoimmune reaction means little or no insulin is produced, so glucose cannot enter cells effectively. Blood glucose levels rise too high after eating, causing hyperglycemia, hyper meaning high, and glycemia referring to glucose. Without treatment, this can lead to the use of fat and protein for energy, producing ketones, and possibly causing ketoacidosis, which can be life-threatening. Type 1 diabetes often develops in childhood and appears suddenly. Symptoms include thirst, frequent urination, fatigue, blurred vision, and weight loss. Treatment requires lifelong insulin therapy along with diet and exercise to support overall health. Type 2 diabetes develops more gradually and is caused by insulin resistance. Cells do not respond properly to insulin. The pancreas may still produce insulin, but over time the beta cells become less efficient. Type 2 is strongly linked to lifestyle factors such as obesity, poor diet, and inactivity, though age and genetics also contribute. Symptoms are similar to type 1, but often milder at first. It can often be managed or prevented through lifestyle changes such as a balanced diet and regular exercise. Medication may be needed if lifestyle measures are not enough, and insulin therapy may become necessary in advanced cases. Thermoregulation is the body's ability to maintain a stable internal temperature between 36.1 and 37.2 degrees centigrade, even when the environment changes. This is vital because enzymes only function effectively within a narrow temperature range. Thermoregulation involves 3 key steps: detecting a temperature change, processing that information, and producing a response. Detection is carried out by thermoreceptors, coordination by the hypothalamus, and the response by effectors such as skeletal muscles, sweat glands, blood vessels, and brown adipose tissue. The hypothalamus, a small region of the brain, plays the central coordinating role. It receives signals from 2 kinds of thermoreceptors. Peripheral thermoreceptors, located in the skin, detect changes in environmental temperature, while central thermoreceptors, found within the hypothalamus, monitor the temperature of the blood and core body tissues. When these receptors detect a deviation from the normal range, they send nerve impulses to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus compares the information with the body's temperature set point. If it detects that the body is too cold or too hot, it activates the appropriate effectors. Together, these systems form a precise negative feedback loop that maintains core temperature within the safe range required for normal enzyme activity and metabolic function. When the body becomes too cold, the hypothalamus activates several warming responses. One of the most important is shivering, the rapid involuntary contraction of skeletal muscles. Each contraction requires respiration, and the energy released is converted to heat, which warms the blood and raises core temperature. At the same time, the hypothalamus triggers vasoconstriction, the narrowing of arterioles supplying the skin. With less blood flowing to the skin and extremities, less heat is lost, and warm blood is retained in deeper tissues. Another response is hair erection, caused by contraction of the erector pili muscles attached to hair follicles. This causes hairs to stand upright, and in many mammals traps an insulating layer of air. In humans, this effect is limited but still occurs as goosebumps. Finally, the hypothalamus can activate brown adipose tissue or brown fat, which generates heat through uncoupled respiration. Instead of using energy from respiration to make ATP, brown adipose tissue releases it directly as heat by breaking down stored triglycerides. On longer timescales, the hypothalamus can also increase heat production by altering hormone levels. If core temperature is too low, the hypothalamus can stimulate the pituitary gland. In response to hypothalamic signals, the anterior pituitary releases thyroid-stimulating hormone, TSH. TSH travels in the blood to the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland then secretes the hormone thyroxine. Thyroxine acts on many tissues in the body to increase metabolic rate. A higher metabolic rate means more respiration is occurring per unit time, which generates more heat. This includes increased metabolic activity in brown adipose tissue. When the body becomes too hot, the hypothalamus activates cooling responses. One of the most important is sweating. Sweat glands in the skin secrete sweat onto the surface, and as it evaporates, it removes heat from the body. Evaporation is highly effective because it uses the body's latent heat of vaporization, cooling both the skin and the blood beneath it. The hypothalamus also triggers vasodilation, the widening of arterioles that supply the skin. When these blood vessels dilate, a greater volume of warm blood flows to the skin each second, increasing heat loss through radiation, convection, and conduction. It is important to note that vasodilation does not move blood vessels close to the surface. It simply increases their diameter to allow more blood to flow. At the same time, erector pili muscles relax, causing hairs to lie flat. Without an insulating layer of air, more heat escapes from the body surface. Altogether, these mechanisms, sweating, vasodilation, and hair flattening, work together to release excess heat and restore the body's temperature to its normal range through negative feedback. So this brings us to the end of the key concept video for standard level and higher level IB biology on homeostasis, and I leave you with the summary points of what we have covered.